agenda for today, start off with the global economy, then look at the airline industry overview, then jump into KQ business review. I'll then invite Alex, our finance director, to talk around the financial results, and I'll get back to talk to you about the future outlook. And later on, invite our chairman, Mr. Evanson Mwaniki, to say a few words, and then we'll open it up for question and answer session. If you look at the global economy, from IATA had predicted that trade will remain subdued in 2013 for airlines in most markets. It also predicted that the economic activities in the developed economies are bullish, and that emerging economies will be slowing down. And the new geopolitical risk due to the crisis in Ukraine will put pressure on oil prices. If you then look at the GDP growth comparison as predicted by the IMF, going forward, sub-Saharan Africa will still continue to be ahead of the rest of the world. But you see that the gap there is closing down. If you then look at the global airline industry, profits increased in the year 2013, but at thin margins. And we saw a rebounding in passenger travel, but depressed cargo business, mostly in the rest of the world. If you then look at the factors that impacted 2013-14, there are a number of them. One is high fuel prices, and a common one that we all know in Kenya of travel advisories, and the geopolitical risk in almost each of the continents. Then look at the state of industry itself, and that is comparing the 2 years, that is 2013-14 and 2012-13. And you look at the various regions, you look at Africa, if you look at the RPKs, Africa did 7.2, and when you look at North America rebounded because it was below the Middle East previous years, but now it's moved up and is ahead of the Middle East. If you look at industry itself on average, on RPKs we had 5, and the ASK's increase was 4.3, and a cabin factor of 80%. And if you look at cargo at 0.2 FTKs, and the FTKs are at 1.3. Now on KQ, we underperformed the industry on RPKs, and again, increased our ISKs at a lower rate than industry, and had a lower cabin factor than industry, and in fact that's what's driven us to reduce our ISKs. However, on cargo, we outperformed the industry and only underperformed North America. And if you look at capacity, we did not increase capacity on cargo. So we utilized the capacity that we had very well. And again, if you look at the total market itself, you see the green arrows there all pointing in the right direction. However, as I pointed out earlier on, again, all this yielded very thin margins in terms of profits. Again, looking at the net profit and the EBIT margins, the left scale is the EBIT margin as a percentage of total revenues, and the right scale is the net post-tax profits. And you can see that there's been a slight improvement in 2013. There is a prediction that the situation will improve further in 2014. That's the year that we've already started. If you look at the growth in air travel, it's accelerating. Again, when you compare it with global industrial production, you can see that the two mirror each other. And again, that's a source from IATA. And when you look at the business confidence, the worldwide growth in air travel, again, mirrors the business confidence. And you expect that because, of course, when there is business confidence, people travel quite a bit. Then look at the KQ full year business review. I'll start off by looking at the fleet. And this fleet is at the end of March 2014, which was the end of the financial year 2013-2014. And amongst the wide bodies, we had brought in a 777-300, a new one with a 400 seats capacity. That's the largest type of aircraft that we have now in the fleet. We still retain the 4 777-200, and we have the old 767-300. So in total, we had, as at the end of March, 11 wide bodies compared to the previous year when we had 10. So we had only an increase of 1. You look at the narrow bodies, the area where we increased the numbers is around the Embraer 190s. We moved up from 11 to 15. The rest remained as they were the previous year, bringing the total number of aircraft that we have in the fleet to 43 as at the end of 2014. When I get into looking at the future, I will mention what has happened in as far as the fleet is concerned, because it's a major change that has occurred. On the freighters, 2013 we had the 747-400, which was not owned by us, but was a joint venture with KLM Martinair. Now that was discontinued, hence the number has come down to 0. But we maintained, or we increased the 737-300, which are owned by us, from 1 to 2, bringing the total number of aircraft now in our fleet to 45, up from 42. There are a number of things around the network. We opened 3 routes in the year. We launched Livingstone in Zambia, and that's doing quite well. We launched Abu Dhabi, but had to close down for a period when the season was down. But we are looking at revisiting Abu Dhabi jointly with Etihad. We opened Blantyre in Malawi, and that's also doing well. If you then look at the destinations have increased to 62 as at the end of March last year. That's an increase from the year 1996 when we got privatized, when we had 23 destinations, to 62 at the moment. Let me talk a little bit about the airport, because when we had the fire at the airport, I think we all thought that that was the end of everything, but in a way, it has become a blessing in disguise, because it has speeded up the work that the Kenya Airports Authority has been doing around the airport. Now, as you drive into the airport, to your left, as you're going in, there's construction that's going on, and that is Unit 4, although it's now been baptized as Unit 1A. And the work's been going on, and the plans are to have a partial completion by next month. In fact, they're due to open on the 4th of July, but there are still 1 or 2 things that need to be finalized for it to be 100% usable. And that should be finalized by the end of the calendar year 2014. That is the unit that you see out there coming out as a protrusion from the main terminal. It will have 7 contact gates and 3 busing gates and 30 check-in desks. Now, that particular terminal will be solely dedicated to Kenya Airways and the SkyTeam members. That's KLM and Korean Airlines. And we're excited to really go into that Unit 4, because it will change the whole outlook of our own operation. The next thing is that behind the tower, the main Kenya Civil Aviation tower, there is a temporary terminal called Unit 5 that is going on, and that will serve international as well as domestic arrivals and departures. It has 6 nose-out parkings, 5 gates, and 20 check-in counters. Now, Unit 4 will have a capacity of 2.5 million passengers. And just to give you an idea of what the size looks like, the existing airport, that's Unit 1, 2, and 3, were built to handle 2.5 million passengers. So in terms of design capacity, the Unit 4 and the existing airport will be the same. Then Unit 5, that's the temporary terminal, will also have a capacity of 2.5 million passengers. So we're looking at bringing in 5 million passengers capacity per annum by bringing in the two terminals. Now on the arrivals, we have an international arrivals that's going to be constructed, and it will have 8 immigration desks, 5 arrival belts, and will be completed in Q4 2014. Then there's another arrivals, again an arrival B, which is expected to be completed 2015, and it will have 14 immigration counters and 3 arrival belts. And most of these projects are either being completed or they've signed contracts for them, so it's reality, it's happening. When you go into the Greenfield terminal, that is also happening. Work has started right at the end of where the air traffic controller's tower is. And the estimated time of completion will be around 2018. Again, so far that will be dedicated to KQ and the Sky team. And it will be a big terminal with 60 check-in desks. Just take you back to this slide here. Unit 4 will have 30 check-in desks. So when you move on to the new Greenfield terminal, you are doubling the capacity there. It will have 32 contact gates, 8 remote bays, and it will have a planned capacity of 12 million passengers per annum. Now, there are still discussions going on as to, what do we do with the existing terminals? What do you do with the new terminals that's coming up, Unit 4 terminal, the arrivals terminals? But we haven't come up to a conclusion as yet with the Kenya Airports Authority. Then the second runway, which is parallel to the existing runway, the detailed designs are complete, and it's estimated that it should be ready by around 2018. That will be fully funded by the Kenya government. We do need a second runway because the existing runway requires some maintenance, and for you to maintain it, you may end up closing the whole runway. And if you don't have a second runway, it then means that you have to close the operations of Jomo Kenyatta Airport, which is unacceptable. It's not just all business. We also continue with our CSR. There, in terms of education, is a school in a place called Namunyak near Masai Mara. When we do the Masai Mara Marathon, the proceeds from the marathon are partly used in building this school. And also, the company has also donated some money. We also had a donation from a previous CEO of KLM who retired, and during his retirement due, there was money that was collected to the tune of 2.8 million shillings, and he donated the money to this particular school. Alex was not left counting money. He had to give a bit out of his coffers, as a company coffers, in a school that his department was supporting, where they built a dormitory at a school in Baringo, School for the Deaf. Then I'm sure you have a number of rugby players here or rugby fans here who are expecting to see me. I hope you can see me somewhere there playing. We still continue to sponsor the Kenya Sevens rugby team, which has given us a good name and Kenya a good name. Let me now invite Alex to go through the financial results.
Morning, everybody. It's good to see that all of you have braved the cold morning to come today to hear results. As usual, we'll start with the statistics. And we always start with the RASK, and by now, I'm sure you all know that that means revenue for every ASK. We achieved 6.87 US cents for the year, which was better than the previous year, marginally. In terms of CASK, which is the cost per ASK, we did very well. We came in at 7.3, which is much better than the 7.56 that we achieved the previous year. In terms of capacity, and Titus has covered this a little bit, the ASKs, that's available seats we put out in the market, was almost 14.2 compared to 13.9 million in the previous year, which was a small increase of 1.8. But the RPK, which is the uptake of that capacity, was slightly lower, and hence the cabin factor at 65.6 was slightly lower than the 68.7 that we achieved last year. And as you know, the cabin factor is largely driven by the passenger numbers, and the passenger numbers at 3.7 million were better than last year, marginally. The yield is a different story. We did very well in the yield. We came in at 10.47 compared to 9.7 the previous year, which is excellent. The shilling behaved. It was almost the same rate year on year at 85.92 compared to 85.95. We did well in cargo. We had an extra 1,000 tons, and the yield was flat compared to the previous year. So given the better tonnage obviously we had a better result in terms of the cargo. Then in terms of the numbers, which I believe is why you're all here this morning, we always start with the turnover, and we achieved 106 billion shillings this year, in spite of all the difficulties that you all are aware of, and that was 7% better than last year. And this is a point at which usually Chris Kirubi claps for us. So we welcome we welcome the clap. I think that was a remarkable performance. And just going into the detail of that, as you all know, our core business is passenger, and that's really where the biggest improvement was. We came in at 90 billion against 85 billion the previous year, a 6% improvement. The freight also did well, and even the others, excess baggage and so on, did well. So we are pleased as management and as a board in terms of our performance from a turnover perspective. That is a waterfall, and as I have educated you earlier, a green bar means good, and you can see there are a lot of green bars there comparing last year and this year, from passengers to cargo to handling and others. I think we did well in terms of turnover. Our core activity is passengers, and we did achieve 90 billion shillings turnover against 85 billion shillings last year. And as we saw in the statistics, the main improvement was in the yield. We struggled a bit in the passenger numbers, which then drive the RPK. But if you take the combination of the yield and the RPK, we were 5 billion shillings better compared to the previous year. So then we go into the costs, and I think really this is where we've done extremely well as a business. We came in with the DOCs of 75 billion compared to 77 billion. That is a reduction of almost 2 billion shillings in DOCs in spite of the tough economic conditions that we are all operating. Again, if you look at the waterfall, the left is last year, the right is what we've achieved this year. Fuel, we saved 1.5 billion shillings in fuel. That was a little bit fortuitous because that was because of the better fuel price, but we also had a better burn rate, as we'll show you later. Maintenance was slightly higher because of higher block hours and a more expanded network, but we are working very hard on maintenance, and we've been able to negotiate a lot of our maintenance contracts, and we expect to keep that number under check. We also did well in terms of commissions and other costs, so we are quite pleased to present to you improved results from a DOC perspective. And then going further on, the fleet ownership costs. This is the costs that we incur because of owning the aircraft, and this is mainly the leases we pay for the operating leases and the depreciation that we pay for the aircraft that are on finance lease, or the ones that are on our balance sheet. And as you can see, there was an increase of 1.3 billion shillings at the bottom there, and that is mainly because of depreciation, which was mainly driven by the addition of fleet, particularly the Embraers 190 that came into the fleet. So when you take out the turnover, the direct costs, and the fleet ownership costs, you come up with the gross profit. And again, we came in at 18.2 billion shillings at gross profit level, compared to 10 billion, a 67% improvement. And I can see Chris wants to clap for us again. Yeah. If you then look at the overheads, again, we did very well here. Other than the employee costs, which are driven by union agreements for the pilots, CALPA and AWU, for the other employees, the other costs were pretty much under check, and really so the increase is really as a result of union increases. Other than that, we did manage the overheads well, and we are happy about that. So then we go to the operating loss, and again, this is a remarkable improvement from last year. We achieved a loss last year at operating level, and this is an important number because the operating profit or loss is driven by the fundamentals of the business. this is what we as managers control. And coming in with an improvement at 2.7 compared to 9 billion last year, a 70% improvement, we believe is a fantastic performance, and we are very proud about that. And as management and board, we are committed to improve this even further as we go into the new year. So the margin, negative 2.6 compared to 9.1 in the previous year. That is a significant improvement. Net finance costs, this is mainly the cost of borrowing. As you know, we have a big facility that we negotiated a while back with some of you, banks here, and also the big one for the financing of the 787 that was arranged by AfriExim. There is quite a lot of interest that is accruing to that, and we'll be seeing that number grow as we move ahead, and that's why there is an increase in the net finance cost compared with the previous year. Other losses are mainly driven by foreign exchange losses in some of the, we operate in over 40 countries, and we do suffer the impact of Forex, and that is the way it comes through as other losses. We continue to manage our hedge book, and we did make cash realized gain of almost 1 billion shilling, 972 million shillings against 600 million last year, 62% gain on hedge on fuel derivatives. And this is kudos to especially the treasury team, who continue to do an excellent job in terms of fuel hedging. In fact, over the last 4 years, we calculated we've made about 6 billion shillings out of our hedge book, which is fantastic. So the loss before tax at 4.8 is significantly better. We've cut it by more than half compared to last year. As you know, we continue to operate under difficult economic conditions with the travel advisories and etc. But in spite of that, we were able to cut our loss, and it's because of a good combination. We improved in turnover, we also cut costs, and you always want to have that kind of a combination where the revenue number is improving and the cost number is coming down. Tax, we have to pay our dues to Caesar, yielding a loss after tax of 3.3 billion compared to last year of 7.86 billion. And then quickly going through the balance sheet, I will not spend too much time on this, but the assets, the property, plant and equipment, that is mainly aircraft, has gone up significantly by almost 17 billion. And that is because of the additional aircraft and the support equipment that goes with it. The intangible assets, which is really software, has gone down, and that is largely to do with depreciation year on year. The aircraft deposits, they've gone up. That is, of course, because of additional, you know, we have to pay what we call PDPs, pre-delivery deposits, every time we acquire aircraft. And because we are in a fleet expansion phase, we've paid quite a lot of PDPs, and that explains the 8.4 billion shillings additional PDP. The trade and other receivables, again, this is to do with the PDP interest, which has got to be capitalized until the aircraft is received. And then there's a big number there for 1.5 billion shillings, which is a VAT. You know that we are paying VAT on, we did get an exemption. There was a misleading, if I can use that term, article in the media the other day saying that we do not get exemption on VAT for aircraft. We do get exemption. However, we are not getting exemption on aircraft, on spare parts and engines. And as a result of that, we've had to pay quite a lot of VAT. In fact, the taxman owes us, from a VAT perspective, 1.5 billion shillings, which is a lot of money, and we are constantly talking to them to pay us back our VAT. Fuel derivatives, that is the next big movement there. That is the mark-to-market position on our hedge book. As I said earlier, we're in the money. We've done very well in the hedge book, and we've closed the year in a position of just over 1 billion shillings. The bank and cash balances at 11 billion. It's a healthy amount. As CFO, we always want to have more money in the bank, but we did have a healthy balance of 11 billion shillings closing the year. Then on the liability side of things, there is really hardly any movement. But if you look at the reserve, that's where you put your profit or loss. So the big number there has got to do with the loss for the year. It's offset by some revaluation adjustments on the fuel hedge reserve. Then going further down into the borrowings, that number has increased significantly, and that is consistent with the earlier number we saw on the assets, because a lot of the aircraft that we are picking up is actually funded by debt. So that we expect to continue increasing as we go forward. Then going further down, the sales in advance of carriage, the 10.7 billion, that number represents the amount of sold tickets that we have sold that have not been flown. So whenever we sell a ticket, the money goes into that account. When you fly, we take it from there into revenue. So you can see that has improved year on year, and that is a result of the increased sales, as we saw earlier in the turnover. So there's a growth there because of some of the amounts that have not already been flown. Then in terms of trade and other payables, we did have provisions because of, we are still having a redundancy case. We have to continuously make a provision, so that goes into liability. We also have some leave provisions we have made, and that goes into that account. And then finally, the borrowings, that is a short-term part. At the top there, we saw the long-term part of the borrowing and the non-current liabilities. And the current liabilities, this is a short-term element of the borrowing. And as you can see, it's also increased, consistent with what I said earlier, that we have been borrowing and will continue to borrow quite a bit as we continue on our expansion plan. Then the cash flow. As you know, we always start the cash flow statement with a profit or loss before tax. We did make a loss, as I showed you earlier, of 4.8. Then we always add back to that loss any movements in the P&L that do not have a cash flow impact. And the majority of that is depreciation. And you can see that because of additional depreciation, because of additional assets, we are adding back more. And then we have the movement in working capital. And the main movement in the working capital is a future sales account that I've shown you earlier. Then the income taxes, that's the actual cash we paid. And then the interest paid, 1.6 against 486 in the previous year. As I explained to you earlier, we've seen a lot of, we've borrowed a lot more money to fund our expansion, so we'll continue to see a big number under interest. Then CapEx, that is mainly the aircrafts that we've already spoken about earlier. Then moving down to the other big number is the deposit refunds. Every time we take delivery of an aeroplane, we get back the deposit we had paid before, and we fund the full amount, the full value of the aircraft. So we did receive the refund on the first Dreamliner that we received last year. For about 2.7 billion. And then the deposits, that's the PDPs we pay. As you all know, we pay deposits, and that's where we record it on the cash flow statement every time we are purchasing an aircraft. And then the rights issue, last year we made the 13.8 billion, which of course we didn't make this year because we did not have a rights issue this year. And again, we say thank you for all of you who supported us last year on the rights issue. In terms of the loans raised, we've raised 39 compared to last year. Last year, we had actually raised a bit more than you have this year. And so you'll continue to see interest and loan repayments increasing as we go forward. Then fuel hedging quickly, you can see the fuel has been fairly constant. From February 11, there's a bit of a backwardation, but we continue to monitor this carefully. Since April 2010, I did make reference to this number. We've made 4.5 billion shillings out of our hedging book, and that is excellent for Kenya Airways, maybe not so excellent for our hedging counterparties, some of who are in this breakfast this morning. That is a forward curve position. And the blue line is where the market is. The red line is where we are in our hedge book. So as you can see, we are in the money. and that is why we had a positive number mark to market on the balance sheet. And then we always like to, it's called emotional intelligence, to compare ourselves with other people so that we can be aware, to be self-aware of where we are. And as you can see, compared to British Airways, other than British Airways Group, which is a combination of British Airways and Iberia, and Air Mauritius, everybody else pretty much made a loss. South African Airways made a loss, margin of 4.4. Air France, KLM, made a loss margin 7.2. Malaysia Airways also made a loss 7.7. KQ, we made a loss at 3.2 negative margin. We are not, obviously would have preferred to make a loss, but given the condition of the market and what's happening in the aviation industry, you can see that it's been a tough year for all of us. But as Titus showed us earlier, when he showed the graph of profitability going into the future, the IATA expectation is that going into the following year that we're getting into, profitability in aviation is going to improve, and we are bullish that we shall also do better. So those are the results for KQ, and allow me again to invite Titus to come and talk to us about the future.
Thanks, Alex. I guess just to remind you of the environment that we were operating in last year when we did the work that Alex has shown you. We had the JKIA fire, which of course impacted us. We came out of it, I think, much better than we expected. We had the Westgate issue, which I wouldn't want to remind you, but that took longer in as far as the impact on us is concerned. Now, looking at the future outlook, we are fairly positive, of course, barring any external things that may happen. We are very optimistic because of a number of things. One is the airport itself. We've been complaining about the airport for a long time. I've taken you through what the government and KIA are doing, which is positive. And then the next thing is our fleet. When I showed you our fleet, as at the end of March 2014, we still had the old 767s, which are A, fuel inefficient, and B, not customer friendly in terms of the cabin outlook. Going forward, I'll show you here what we are doing in terms of the fleet modernization, and that combined with the work that's going on at the airport gives us that optimism that we'll be able to give back to customers a good product and a good service. If you look at our schedule, we're looking at a number of new destinations. One which we've already started is Abuja, and Abuja is doing quite well at the moment. We are not doing a daily to Abuja as yet because we don't have traffic rights, but we are pursuing, with the help of the government of Kenya, more rights. That's to go in there on a daily basis. We are also looking at going into Beijing this financial year. And we have a number of schedule changes, which are increases. Dar es Salaam, we're increasing it by 7 to 35 weekly frequencies. Entebbe the same. And Charles de Gaulle, we're moving up by 1 frequency to have a daily frequencies. And that we're doing with a 787. Then we've started a Guangzhou non-stop from Nairobi, which does 3 weekly frequencies. And in fact, that particular flight now extends to Lagos. So it comes from Guangzou, stops over in Nairobi, and then off to Lagos and back again to Nairobi to Guangzhou. So you have a direct connection between Lagos and Guangzou, albeit via Nairobi for a short period of time. The 787, which we've started receiving, we've already got 2 of them. We're going to deploy it, or we started deploying it to Paris in June. And then we'll have a deployment in July to Joburg, but not daily, just particular days. And then we have a Bangkok, Hong Kong, Guangzhou deployment in August. And Beijing, which I mentioned at the top there, which is expected to be launched in September using the 787. And then the 777-300, that's the one that I mentioned is new. And there are other 2 that are coming in, as I'll show you later on. We launched Amsterdam using it in June. It's been a success. And we are launching a similar aircraft to Bombay in August. We did try Bombay just before we did Amsterdam, and it was quite successful when we didn't have the 777-200s to service Bombay. On the fleet itself, we have two 777-300s. One arrived in May, the other one is arriving in July, that's next month. And that then brings the total number of aircraft that we have to, someone is blocking. My friend. Unafanya nini nyuma? That brings the total number of these wide-body aircraft to 3. Then on the 787 Dreamliners, we got one in April. One arrived on Saturday, last Saturday I mean. So another one arriving in July, another one in August, September, and the last one in October, which brings a total number of Dreamliners this year to 6. Those 6 replace the 6 767s. And although we're looking at replacing them by around November, we would like to accelerate their going out, say, by around August. So at the end of the day, we will end up having a completely new wide-body fleet, and hence the optimism we have around customer service. Oh, something has happened. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Okay. That's it. That's just showing you how we received our first Dreamliner. We had the blessings of the head of state. And if you then look at the fleet age, as at the end of 30th November 2013, our total fleet average age was 8.1 years. And we're looking at moving on to, as at the end of 30th November 2014, moving on to 6.7. And as at the end of November 2015, we are expecting another reduction, which will bring the age to 5.6. So you can see by around the end of this year, we'll have a completely new fleet, very young fleet. We have also reviewed the future plans for the E170s, the Embraer, the smaller Embraers. 2 have already gone back. We have another 3 that have got to go. And we're also looking at, what do we need to do with the 737-700s, as well as the 300s and the 777-200, which although looked newer before the 777-300 came in and the 787s, they are now looking older. So we have discussions going on around what we do with the fleet. Now, we have a number of opportunities that we're also looking at. We mentioned last year that we were looking at a fuel project where we buy our own fuel, and that's going on. We hope to finalize it hopefully this year. We also continue to look at technology and see how we can apply it through mobile platforms. Like we brought in the self-check-in, self-service mobile applications, and the Fly with Bonga Points project. I won't say much about Jambojet because we've only just started it. We started in April and it's working quite well. It's a separate entity from KQ. It's run by that team that you see there. The man on my right, second from the right-hand side, is the MD of the company. It's called William Hondias. And hopefully by the end of this financial year, we will have results to show you on the performance of Jambojet. We are currently servicing 3 destinations as Mombasa, Eldoret, and Kisumu. Now that doesn't mean that we've removed Kenya Airways from all the destinations. We've only removed Kenya Airways from Eldoret, but we have some Kenya Airways flights that service Mombasa and Kisumu. We also have a project that we're looking at, and that's to do with our own staff. Yes, we're looking at the airport. We're renewing the fleet, but we also need to work on our own people. And we have a major project called the Guest Experience Program, which is to improve the customer service that we deliver using all customer touch points within the organization. And that's starting, in fact, next week. Then at the airport, as of course the airport Terminal 4 gets finalized, we're getting 2 lounges there that are much, much larger than the lounges that we have right now, and even the ones we had before the fire. That's just a 3D visualization of what it will look like. It's going to be a very, very good lounge and big enough for all our business passengers. Now, although we're fairly optimistic about the year, we still have a number of challenges that we foresee. One is a continuing insecurity risk in Kenya, which of course leads to travel advisories. And of course the competition that continues to come out to Nairobi. We're seeing a lot of the Middle East carriers increasing capacity into Nairobi, as well as our northern brother, who is our neighbor, also increasing capacity. We have had a challenge around double taxation agreement because the negotiations between the Kenya government and the various governments have been fairly slow. I think we've only got about 2 in the last 1 year. That's 2 finalized. Then, of course, the famous subject of unpredictability of the fuel prices. And Asia, which is our market, the new market that we're getting into, there are indications that the GDP is going to slow down. So that could pose a challenge to us. Then, of course, the civil unrest and elections in Africa, because the size of Africa, or the size of the continent of Africa, is such that there are elections almost every month in every country. So we face that challenge as we go forward. I'll end my presentation there and invite you to ask any questions, and I'd like to invite Alex to join me here at the podium in case there are questions I cannot answer.
Thanks. Can you hear me? Thanks, Titus, and your finance boss. And I think it should not be forgotten that maybe this is the last financial presentation you'll be doing, as we understand you retiring. But I hope we'll have a party. But besides the party, I think we investors, to thank you very, very, very much for what you have done. Those numbers shows a company on the run, cutting down your loss by more than half, nearly 60%, and also equipping the airline for the future challenges. I think it's something that many people must not ignore and forget. We believe Kenya Airways is the gateway for us here, we investors. And I would appeal that you increase flights to the countries which do not have this habit of giving us, what do you call it? Terrorist warnings and dangerous country to visit, so that we can build solid partnership with Nigeria, Ethiopia, all these markets which we can strengthen ourselves. The European markets, I see you took the Dreamliner first to Paris. I think it should have gone first to Nigeria. I totally believe Africa will solve its own problems. And therefore, as you retire, we like also to recognize and wish the incoming CEO, who is a very humble and a good friend of mine, a lot of luck in continuing your good work. And the only thing I like to appeal as a frequent flyer all the time is that the airport must be made more comfortable for the travelers. I go there, and in the morning you find the little lounge you have. I see you got something new. It's totally jammed, and hardly anybody can walk through. I think comfort for the travelers, and seeing your new CEO and seeing the finance manager at the airport those early mornings, I think we'll forgive the chairman. But, but the operating guys should also come to the airport early morning and see what is the reality that the travelers get, the challenges, so that when they sit in their room, their offices, they are talking of what they know. They've been out there in the morning. I think it's a very good thing. There used to be a minister who used to run around ministries early morning and surprises his workers. So, Titus, we wish you the best of luck. And I ask the press, please profile Titus for what he has done for Africa. This is an airline that has survived all the odds, all the people who wish us wrong things, all the travelers' advisory issues, and we are still the best. And I think you must be proud of what is yours. I thank you, Titus. I have no question than to say compliments, best of luck in your retirement. We will keep you very busy. We'll put you in many boats where you can share your knowledge and your advice. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, for the compliments. And I hope you have a boat that has a lot of kettle. That's what I like to do. Just a few comments on Chris's remarks. First of all, the management of KA has changed and changed positively. And what we are seeing in as far as the airport construction is concerned are things that we've not seen in a long time. And that's what gives me confidence around the airport. In fact, as we are talking right now, this afternoon, Mbuvi and I are meeting with Lucy to go and inspect Unit 4. And they do that with Mbuvi on a weekly basis. On senior management going to the airport, we do that. In fact, if you ask Kevin, who is next to you, he will tell you when he was last there. I personally go there myself. So it happens. But we've got to do it also in a way that we do not interfere with the operations of the staff who are running the airport. On the other comments, the lounge that we're doing, which I again keep showing you, I think will be a much, much better product than what you've seen. We do admit that we've suffered for a long time. I remember having discussed the issue of the airport, the construction of the new terminal. When I joined KQ, and that was on the 18th of April, 2003, I have it etched in my own mind, the date. So it's been a long journey, but it's well worth it. Now, any other question? And may I ask yourselves to, whoever asked a question, to introduce yourself, please. Kirubi is known by everybody, so I didn't ask him to introduce himself. Thank you. Hi,
it's Andrew Light from Citigroup. With these 2 777s coming this year and the 6 787s, what is the amount of CapEx you're expecting this year, and to what extent have you already arranged funding for that CapEx? And also, what do you anticipate the capacity growth to be this year in terms of available seat kilometres?
I didn't hear your last question.
What capacity growth do you anticipate this year in terms of available seat kilometres?
Hi, Andrew. Nice to see you again. As you know, the amount that we pay for our fleet is highly confidential. But given the fleet that you have mentioned, we are looking at a CapEx spend for this year of the order of about $1 billion. That has already been financed using the AFRI EXIM facility. And the other question about capacity, with this additional fleet, we also bring in some 737-8s. We expect to increase our capacity by about 40%.
Let me invite the chairman to the podium. You may perhaps feel less shy to ask him questions.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll agree with me that when all has been said in such clear terms, it makes it very difficult for the one making the last one making remarks, makes it very difficult. I've been scratching my head thinking of what they have not covered. I can't find anything. So allow me just to share the optimism that the management of Kenya Airways have going forward into the future. They have outlined or highlighted many areas of improvement, starting from the infrastructure at the airport, the new fleet you are getting, which is not only new, but more fuel efficient, the new destinations you are going to be opening, the frequencies you are going to increase in certain destinations, many things they have mentioned. I also wish to thank Chris Kirubi, who spoke on behalf of shareholders. It's always nice, from board perspective, to hear that we have support from the shareholders, support in terms of the strategies that we are implementing. So I will not be saying much more than just to thank the management of Kenya Airways for the good work they have done. I want also to thank the board of directors for the continuing support. They are not all here, but I would like those who are here just to stand up so that I may introduce them. Board members who are present here, just stand up, please. Well, Titus and Alex are on the board. They need not stand because they were here before. But starting from my right here is Dinesh Kapila, well known to all of us, distinguished lawyer, very helpful member of the board. Next to him is Ayisi Makatian, a well-known entrepreneur, you know, in his own right, is on our board. Then next here is Dennis Awori, who is also very well known. He finds time when he's not too busy in Toyota to come to our meetings. And at the end there is Ron Skipper, who represents KLM. There are two of them on the board representing KLM, Ron and Peter Elbas. Peter Elbas was not able to come. You may sit down. And of course, we are going to have a new member of the board joining us towards the end of the year. His name is Mbuvi, because he becomes the MD and CEO. So Mbuvi, would you like just to come and stand here, because not everybody may know you. Come and stand here. So this is the man himself. For those who may not know him, I'm not going to preempt what he's going to tell the press later about his background and so on. But he's from both a financial background and operations background. Mbuvi. Welcome, Mbuvi. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You may sit down. Yeah, sure. Yes, I should have mentioned. Thank you for reminding me. You see how active he is. I should mention that we have two permanent secretaries. They're not permanent secretaries these days, principal secretaries, not so permanent like before. On the board, the principal secretary in Treasury, I don't think he's with us this morning. He's very busy with those Eurobond issues. And of course, the principal secretary in the Ministry of Transport, Ms. Nduva, whom you know. At the Treasury, we have Kamau Thuge. So the last thing I want to say is just to thank you for having found time to come so early in the morning to attend this investor briefing, and to ask you to continue supporting us. Without your support, we can't get much. We can't get very far. But so please continue with your support. Thank you very much.